Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi, it's Patrick O'Driscoll here. You might know me as Pods. I'd like to welcome you to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. It's the podcast we produce for the love of farming right throughout the Adelaide Hills region. And now, I'll hand over to Adelaide Hills Farm Services' very own Belle Baker. Over to you, Belle.
Hi there, welcome to this month's Adelaide Hills Farmcast, or should I say Adelaide Hills and Fleurieu Farmcast. In this episode of the Adelaide Hills and Fleurieu Farmcast, I go through our monthly almanac, a list of things to consider doing on your small acreage property, and I talk with Paul Clifford from Raine and Horne, Strathalbyn about selling rural properties and what potential buyers are looking for. Hi Paul, thanks for joining me today.
Hi Belle, thanks for having me.
Oh look, it's great to have you down here. We'll talk to Paul a bit later on, but let's make a start on the almanac. February is stud bull selling season. The Stock Journal Beef Week 2023 starts this Friday the 3rd with the Fleurieu, Adelaide Hills and Loxton cattle studs having their open day on Sunday the 5th of February. If you haven't been to a beef field day, it's well worth a look. Cattle studs are clustered into areas so that you can easily spend the day attending 4 to 5 different properties. Here in the Adelaide Hills, Fleurieu and Loxton, we've got 11 enterprises opening their doors, or should I say gates, to the public. Some cattle studs offer the ability to buy cattle on the day. Others use it as a prelude for their on-farm sales held at a later date. Of course, you will need your PIC number if you intend to make a purchase. And there won't just be bulls on sale or on display that day. Many studs take the opportunity to display their breeding stock, cows and heifers, and sometimes there will be a pen of weaners there as well. Breeders generally take any opportunity they can get to show off what their cattle can achieve in the sale yards or abattoirs. The Stock Journal produces a guide to Beef Week so you can map out which properties are on display in your area. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. All this talk of stud bulls and cattle sales may have you wondering what the difference is between stud cattle and commercial cattle. Whilst I haven't been able to find an Oxford Dictionary definition on what stud cattle are versus commercial cattle, I can explain it by saying that stud cattle are tightly held lines of single breed cattle, e.g. Angus, that are selected and bred with a clear genetic advantage in mind. The cattle and their dams and sires will be registered with the Breed Association, and this registration can be transferred to a person who purchases the cattle. It's like a family tree or ancestry.com, for example. Stud cattle are generally sold with accompanying estimated breeding values, or EBVs, which are measurements of genetic potential that can be used to assess an animal's breeding merit for a specific trait. Now bear with me here folks. For example, birth weight. Low birth weights are desirable as they represent calving ease. However, it may also indicate a later growth pattern. Docility is another one. Quieter cattle are easier and safer to handle, and they do tend to put on more weight more quickly. Interestingly, docility is a highly heritable trait, like coat colour, and so it can be improved quite easily through genetically improved with good breed selection. Another one is the 400-day weight. The higher this figure is, the quicker you can potentially get a vealer to market. An eye muscle area, the larger, more positive this is, the more favourable as consumers will pay a premium for this cut of beef. Now, it's pretty obvious. I have a tendency to get a bit excited when I talk about EBVs, and it's tempting to get carried away with all the data. But you must always look at the animal in front of you and take a visual assessment into account, together with the EBVs, when purchasing your stud cattle. Now, unlike stud cattle, commercial cattle are often a cross between 2 or more breeds, for example, Angus and Murray Grey cross. This is done to improve the hybrid vigour with the goal of producing more weight per day of age. Commercial cattle rarely have EBVs because other than average weight gains, few other traits are recorded. Stud cattle are generally considered genetically superior to commercial cattle, and if being sold as stud cattle, i.e. the registration of that animal is transferred to the new owner, then that animal should, inverted commas, be a good representative of the breed with few visual or structural flaws. If considering buying cattle for your property, it's always a good idea to seek independent advice. Stock agents are a good starting point, and be prepared to pay more for your stud cattle than commercial cattle. If this is something you'd like more information on, you can go to futurebeef.com.au and navigate to the resources. I've put the link in the show notes. Spraying. Pods is up at Summertown today, putting the finishing touches on a fence around a house paddock, but I did ask him to give me a rundown on the spraying jobs he's got booked for February. As soon as it rains, and I think by that he means sort of 5 to 10 mils, and the summer weeds have freshened up, which will help with the uptake of chemical, Pods is heading out to spray a few properties for couch grass, potato weed, wireweed, caltrop and melons. Particularly for the couch grasses, he'll be using a heavy brew of glyphosate or Crucial 600, Garlon, Li 700 and ammonium sulphate. It will take a few goes to get rid of the couch grass. Here at Currency Creek, we've got several applications planned for our back paddock throughout 2023, but the other weeds should only need one hit before the paddocks are ready to sow again. Rabbits. Oh my gosh, this is something I'm not going to miss. I haven't spotted a single rabbit on our property at Currency Creek, and I'd really, really like to keep it that way. The Hills and Fleurieu Landscape Board are running their rabbit baiting programs again this month, and we would encourage anyone with a rabbit problem to give it a go. I've put a link to their registration page in the show notes. As we talked about last year in our April edition of the Farmcast with Rob Murphy, you really need to attack rabbits on a number of fronts. One single method will not be enough to eradicate the problem. I'll put a link to Rob's interview in the show notes. They'll give you more details of the type of things we're talking about. Water, glorious water. This month, we're actually replacing all of our round plastic troughs on the property with more robust cement troughs. I can acknowledge quite happily that plastic troughs have a place, just not here near me, but they really don't hold up when you've got cattle drinking from them all the time. When we go to do this, I'll take some footage and show you how we prepare the site with rubble so that it's flat and slightly raised, and how we install the floats so that the troughs are always kept full but not overflowing. Hay. We're always talking about the importance of asking for a feed test when you're purchasing hay. A few weeks ago, we had Alice Morley from FP Ag come out and take samples of the hay that we have for sale here. The results make interesting reading. Protein levels are down because it was such a long wet season and there was such a delay in getting the hay cut and baled. But we're not alone. Most hay producers are in the same boat. And at least when you buy our hay, you can determine for yourself if you want it for your horses, sheep, cattle, etc. I took some footage of Alice taking samples. It's a very easy process that only takes about 30 minutes. I'll post it in the show notes and in the socials for you so you can get an idea of what it takes to do. Incredibly simple. So hopefully that will give you a few ideas of what you could be thinking about and planning to do on your property in the coming months. And don't forget, the show notes for this episode can be found on our website, AdelaideHillsFarmServices.com.au. Now, that rounds out our complete 12-month set of farm management tasks for our Farm Almanac. We've deliberately made them evergreen so that any July episode you listen to in any July will be relevant for that month, and they'll be available forever. Yay! But starting next month, we'll take a broader look at farm operations and focus on one or two key things that small acreage farmers need to address as a part of running their farms throughout the year. We've got plenty of fodder to work through and a heap of people I want to interview, but if you'd like to suggest a topic for us to discuss, please send an email. Now we'll head back outside to chat with Paul Clifford from Raine and Horne Rural Strathalbyn and how to prepare your rural property for sale. Hi, I've got Paul Clifford here with me today from Raine and Horne Rural SA. Wonderful to have you down here on our new property, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Belle. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
All fresh and new.
Yeah.
And just moved in. The bag's unpacked.
Oh, yes, we are completely in.
Good.
Yeah, no, and I'm not moving again for a long time. Hear
Good.
that, Pods?
Don't blame you.
This is it. This is our forever home.
No, well done.
Yeah, no, we're really excited and we really appreciate all the help that you and Brendan gave us in getting to this point. Now, Brendan, talking about rural properties, specifically here in South Australia and in the Fleurieu and Adelaide Hills region, are you seeing a slowing down in the market at all, or is it still going from strength to strength?
Yeah, thanks, Belle. Absolutely not. Probably surprised as we start the new year. I had a few properties come on and, I was expecting, like everyone else was saying, that it may be a little bit more sluggish than it has been. And absolutely anything but that. Yeah, demand has been really, really strong. Plenty of people turning up at opens or plenty of people wanting to view private inspections. And it seems to be just marching along really nicely. Yeah.
And is there any difference in the smaller acreage, say 3 to 10 acreage properties versus the larger, perhaps more productive agricultural land? Is there any difference?
Look, demand is still just as strong. Probably the only thing I would say, the smaller lifestyle blocks, we're probably seeing more finance buyers there.
What do you mean by finance buyers?
People that are, it's their upgrade, I guess. Maybe they might be selling a smaller home in town somewhere, and this is their wish. They've got young kids, etc., or they're getting to that semi-retirement age, sick of the gutter stuff, so they're heading for the joys of the country. Right behind us here, the joys of the country, and so it is a step up. So they're needing finance to make that step up in the property world. Where the bigger properties, it does seem to be generally people that are coming into a new area where they've sold elsewhere, so they're cashed up, ready to go.
Right, so they would generally already be in the agricultural industry, already primary producers?
A bit of a combination, Bill. Yeah. So we're getting guys. I've had a bit of a run with guys coming down from the territory that have sold stations in the territory, pastoral areas, the southeast, upper southeast, lower southeast. Combination of people that are sort of at retirement age but still just want to hang in, so just want a bit of land to play with.
Yeah.
Sort of sold elsewhere. So that's mainly on the bigger stuff. Yeah.
So there's two different groups really of people that are looking at buying, maybe the smaller acreage, 3 to 10, 15 acres, and then the larger, more productive ones. Are they looking for different things when they're looking at the land? So is one more focused on the house or the homestead and the garden, and the other looking at more productive agriculture where they're keener to see soil tests, water tests, that kind of thing?
Yeah, getting a real combination, Belle. I guess without being sexist, the men of the house, they look straight at the land and go not too fussed about the house. And I always say, well, look, you need to be a bit fussed about the house because you spend a fair bit of time in there still.
Yeah.
The wives, partners, etc., they're probably a bit more interested in the home as well. But a combination, and still we get some people that if they're living, let's say they're not living on farms, the home is pretty secondary. So that's probably the great thing, I suppose. Everyone wants something slightly different, and I guess that's why. If we've got our buyer's hat on, we all don't buy the same property. Everyone's looking for something a little bit different, yeah.
So if you're looking to sell a property at the moment in the Adelaide Hills and Fleurieu region, what are some of the things that you would look to do to make your property more attractive to buyers? So are there some high level things or things that are really worth doing, and some other things that are perhaps just nice to do? But I guess if you look at a house, there are things you want to hide, or things you sort of paint the house, or you do up the garden at the front door, or things like that. What are the things that you should be doing for your rural property to make sure you get that sale and that price that you ultimately want?
Yeah. Well, yeah, look, I'd say at the moment it's worth it because real estate prices, we've never seen them higher. And so, I say the difference between a great price and a, extraordinary price is that little bit of effort. Now, if we've got a very elderly farming couple, we try and go a little bit easier on them perhaps, unless they've got some outside help, or we can actually, supply. That's what you guys are for. We recommend other help, but some people do find it daunting. And I actually find some of the elderly people actually probably struggle to flip the switch to put a property on the market because they don't know where to start. And so we'd like to think we're really helpful in not putting pressure on them, but just offering subtle suggestions of how to get the property ready. Quite often I'll see Farmer John walks into his shed. He walks in there and goes, right, I need to make a start. Looks at the shed and daunting.
Quite overwhelming.
Yeah, overwhelming.
Yeah.
Locks the shed, goes back and I'll look at that tomorrow or next week. So it's important, without being pushy or overstepping the mark, that we say, look, we can offer assistance and help, and giving the right people that can help them if they haven't got family members or it's a bit beyond them. Because overwhelming is the word that comes in a lot. Yeah,
sure. So when we're asked to come on board and help out with somebody who wants to sell their property, generally it's the obvious things like there might be a tree over a fence. And so we're called in to cut the tree up, get rid of the firewood or stack it somewhere and repair the fence. Is that the kind of things, are they worthwhile doing, or is that just a part of rural life?
Look, certainly worth doing, Bill. Yeah, look, a bit of both. It is part of rural life. Certainly that comes as one of the job lists. That you're going to have some maintenance, and generally that's what people want too. They like, that's their therapy. So if you've been working in your 9-to-5 job, you come home, cutting up a tree can be therapy, or doing those jobs can be a bit of therapy.
If you've got time, of course.
If you've got time, yeah, that's right. And again, for the bigger stuff, that's where we say we get the experts in and, pass over, details for the people that can handle that. A lot of people on the smaller blocks too, I say it may not be worth having the machinery to do some of these jobs, if you're repasturing, spraying, refencing, etc. And they just have to, work out what they think, is a viable option of what machinery and plant do they want, and what stuff do they want to outsource to contractors.
Yeah.
So that's always a consideration as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that from our point of view, we've looked at quite a few properties recently to buy, and some of the things that sort of put us off was the initial presentation, like the gateways, whether they've got weeds everywhere, which probably means they've got weeds in their hay paddocks, or gates that are not hung properly, and rubbish all over like fencing wire all over the paddocks. Some of those obvious things, I know we paid attention to it, but I wonder if that's a really personal thing. Sometimes some buyers are going to look for that stuff and go, I don't think this property's been well looked after. It's not worth the money. I can't see how I'm going to make it productive in a reasonable time frame. Yeah. Whereas if those jobs had already been done when the buyers walk in, you can instantly say, well, I don't need to worry about the rubbish. I can go straight ahead with the production stuff. And I know everything else has been taken care of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I say, you walk into a property, presentation's everything. And as soon as you walk into a property, people might say, my property's tip top. Of course it is. I've got enough experience to walk in and go, righto, I can see who's fertilised and who's, got good pastures and who hasn't. And you can tell that from the livestock as well. Some people, I guess, they've walked over that piece of wire or that piece of, that bit of farm scrap for years and they don't see it. So again, subtly and sometimes not so subtly, I like to sort of point out and to say, hey, look, this will help you, as again we said earlier, go from a good price to a great price. Just those little bits and pieces, because people walk in and they go, okay, we can tell this property feels loved. There's a big difference between a property that feels loved and doesn't. That's the difference. Yeah. So really important to me.
And do you find people looking to buy rural properties tend to always ask for fertiliser history, water tests, maybe hay tests, or do they not worry about that, knowing they're going in and going to do all that stuff and start from a clean slate? Do you think having that paddock history, that agronomy history, it helps sell a property?
Look, certainly it depends on the size, Bill. But for the bigger broadacre properties, yes, it certainly helps. So when we can produce data, fantastic. I love data. Yeah. And sometimes we are swamped with really good data, and other times we get very, very little. So if we've got it, we provide it, and people love it, and you see that they'll be pouring through the data. But there are plenty of times when we don't. So certainly, we can produce some pretty damn good documents and information memorandums. That's Ted.
Yeah, that's Ted.
Choking on a dead rabbit or something. So look, if we've got the info, we can produce some pretty good stuff. But there are plenty of times when we get fairly minimal, material given to us. So if we haven't got the material, we can't supply it. Certainly, it's interesting. Hay testing. Really rarely get asked it.
Do you?
Which I'm surprised. Yeah, we really get asked hay testing data. But soil tests, fert history, any pasture data, a lot.
Okay. Yeah. So if there were two things you would suggest for people, if they were looking to sell their property, what are two things you would suggest they really need to do to get that high price that we're talking about, What are those things that you say to every seller?
Yeah, certainly for the broadacre properties, gateways, gateways and fencing, the obvious stuff, so that we can get some flow happening.
Mm-hmm.
So if I've got a potential purchaser in the car and he has to go and wrestle with a gate for 5 minutes to get through, it takes his focus. I want him, in the car, bang, gate open, gate shut, away we go.
Yep.
If their focus is wrestling with a gate and rusty old wire, it's not number one. It's not a good look.
No.
And we lose some momentum on our conversation.
Yes.
On talking about the property.
Yes.
Especially if he picks up a gate and it collapses on the ground alongside him. It's just not a good look.
No.
Of course, as I said, I want people, and in an ideal world, when we have, if we haven't got stock in every property have the gate, we want a better flow through.
Yes.
So, again, wrestling with the gate's not an ideal way, or rusty old wire of getting that momentum rolling. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Paul. And thank you for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. We hope you've enjoyed this month's episode and jotted down a few things to do on your to-do list, particularly if you're looking at selling your property in the near future. You can leave your comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just click on the Farmcast tab and it'll get you there. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Hills Farmcast. Belle and I hope you found it helpful. You can leave comments and send questions on the show notes page for this episode, which is on our website, adelaidehillsfarmservices.com.au. Just click on Farmcast and look for the February episode.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.